Oh no, this is something nobody wants to deal with.
Yes, I have lice in my hair and I want to keep them because they are friends.
White people. Oh. I was recently asked this question as to whether white people have more parasites and if that drives things like racism and violence and intolerance towards non-white people.
Before and after Mega Infestation Edition. Bye-bye lice. They were drinking blood out of her forehead. Look at this lice party. No social distancing in here.
And the answer to both of those questions is yes. One of the driving factors for this is the lack of melanin. Melanin is one of the most important aspects of the immune system. It's anti-parasitic, it's antioxidant, and it's also metal chelating, as well as it's a semiconductor for energy.
500 in jewelry, chain was magic, never had it in public, late reaction.
Y'all want to know one of the most wildest thoughts I had as a kid that I was concrete certain of up until, like, high school? I thought lice was just what white people would call their dandruff.
Motherfucker always want to talk about the white privilege, but nobody wants to talk about the white disadvantage. I had a family build on top of my head. I can't even make a family, and lice made a family on my head.
Because nobody admits anything they've done! You even know I'm a copy from a back? No! What am I supposed to do, huh? You're fucking family! What do you want me to do?
When I was in like 3rd grade, I was in after school, and one of the after school teachers was talking about lice, and I asked her, why do white people only get lice? And she said that the reason white people get lice is because lice like clean hair, and because white people wash their hair more, they get lice because their hair is cleaner. I was in 3rd grade. I was literally 8, maybe 9.
Hygiene is cultural.
I don't wash my legs in the shower. I don't know why my legs would be dirty.
Yo guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel, and we're looking at the subject of hygiene again. I did a couple of videos about that in my previous edition. You could check it out, the YouTube channel. You could find 1 or 2 of the contents that I did in this, where we had Caucasian people, talking about issues that bother on health and hygiene, and some people say that hygiene is a cultural matter. But in this video, that one we have watched, you hear the ridiculous comment where someone is saying that hygiene is lies. Actually, for instance, she keeps them in the hair. And when the black student was confronting the teacher of the subject matter, she lied to her and told her that it's because they are cleaner. This is not really targeted at insulting or abusing it, but for educational purposes, and we'll have a couple of videos to share on the subject matter. You could drop your thoughts and your opinion in the comment section, so we'll dive right into the video, and at the end of the day we'll come back to give you our personal analysis on the subject matter. So see you right there.
First thought when a client comes in like this is, oh my god, this is a whole dang lot of lies. My other thought is, can we shave their hair? I'm just kidding. Sometimes we do actually shave people's hair, but I didn't want to shave this lovely girl's hair. She's 13 and she had gorgeous long hair. I just didn't want to take that away from her. Anyways, as you can see, these lice are just having an absolute rave in her hair. They have just completely taken control of her, and you can see they're all falling in her jacket and all over her. So I'm combing through her lovely long hair and scooping out just massive wads of lice. Slowly, it was a really painful process for her, but she was such a superstar. And when I say there were a lot, I mean there is seriously a lot on the floor. They got in my shoes. I was kind of upset about that. They're getting a super big clean after this, and this is one of the baby wipes.
I was recently asked this question as to whether white people have more parasites and if that drives things like racism and violence and intolerance towards non-white people. And the answer to both of those questions is yes. One of the driving factors for this is the lack of melanin. Melanin is one of the most important aspects of the immune system. It's anti-parasitic, it's antioxidant, and it's also metal chelating, as well as it's a semiconductor for energy. It's the most fundamentally important molecule in all of biology. Without this natural barrier against parasites and the reduction of sun exposure, which further increases and cleanses the body of parasites, white people have developed extremely high parasite loads. And this goes all the way back to Roman Empire. You can take a look at their hygiene practices, medieval Europe, the Renaissance, and finally through colonization. So these two factors, higher susceptibility to parasites, as well as hundreds of years, generation after generation of cultivating high parasite loads, has caused white people to be naturally more parasitized. High parasite stress is found to do two things in the domain of psychosocial studies. It leads to hyperindividuality and hyperaggression. This is true for any social species of animal throughout the entire world. We'll use ants as an example. If an ant colony is infected with a tapeworm, the infected ants will subtly, because of the tapeworm, release a pheromone that conditions the entire colony to have that hyperindividuality and hyperaggression. It makes the ants lazy and sluggish. It also makes them extremely defensive. They'll start to attack their neighbors preemptively, fearing that there will be some kind of attack against them. So they lash out. There's a notable reduction in teamwork. They no longer serve the queen, but serve the interests of the infected few ants. And all of this is so that the infected ants have a stronger chance of survival, so that the tapeworm can complete its life cycle, which in this example, it wants to be eaten by a bird. So if we were to take a look at humans in the course of history, we take a look at white people from that perspective of biology, we're going to see them as an invasive species. And we're going to see white people as aggressively colonizing, as well as hyper-individualistic. They lack teamwork, except the only time you'll really see strong teamwork is when they come to the defense of a guilty member who is being accused or found guilty of some kind of crime. White people will come into the defense of community only when there's a threat to their whiteness, to that supremacy or superiority. When white people commit a crime, they are protected, their identity is protected, and usually the narrative is spun so that they come out as a hero. But all you have to do is trace the tracks of history. During colonialization, the reason why sickness was so widespread in native nations was because the hygiene practices, the culture conditions, the microbial culture, and vice versa. Well, that had gone into such a high parasite load that the colonizers devastated the ecosystem of native microbiomes. Basically, their immune systems weren't prepared for the sheer amount of evolved parasites that white people had conditioned and lived with and become accustomed to. White people had been living in filth for hundreds of years and so became carriers of disease. But it does more than that. When we take a look at ants, and we can see that parasites influence pheromones, for humans, we don't use pheromones to communicate, but we use ideologies. And so the parasites, they influence the ideologies. The ideologies of white people is to see everyone as an enemy, to conquer, to propagate the parasites, and to suppress, oppress, and enslave others around them. And now the ideologies of the parasitized science of Western imperialism denies the usefulness of deworming. They say that the sun is bad. And this is only going to get worse as the sun's intensity hits Earth harder. White people are going to retreat from the sun more and more and continually to cultivate worse and worse microbiomes that are toxic to ecosystems and other humans. And you need to look no further than the atrocities committed by white people against indigenous populations, against slaves, and still to this day in foreign countries, and against immigrants, and really anyone who isn't white. In no way am I saying that white people are blameless. What I'm saying is that this is the way it is. This is part of the driving factor. This is part of the motivating force. White people inherently are more susceptible to parasites, and if we look at history, they have been cultivating more and more extreme toxicity and high parasite stress in their microbiomes. This destroys community, drives hyper-individualization, drives hyper-aggression against non-parasitized members. In other words, it becomes white versus non-white people because it's the parasitized versus the non-parasitized. The burden of responsibility is on white people to change and to fight against the oppression that their system has given them the ample opportunities and access and privilege of. This is merely biologically, psychosocially, historically, ideologically, how things went, how they're going. White people created an entire system of racism because of the melanin content of someone's skin. White people
would call their dandruff. Listen, I had my reasons. There were logical steps into this progression of thinking. One, I did not know that lice were like an insect infestation into hair. Because my schools would have lice checks, but they never really explained what it was. They were just like, oh, your head's itchy and it like looks like little white particles, which is what my dandruff looked like. My mom didn't know what to do with my hair, so she just kept throwing shit at the wall trying to figure out what would stick. So my hair was being flat ironed, being relaxed, being braided, using all sorts of different products every other week. So I never got lice and I've never had it. Knock on wood. And when my friend who got lice showed me her head, I was like, oh, that looks like dandruff. So I thought lice was white people dandruff.
You need to take a bath or a shower and you need to change your clothing. This is a public service announcement. There was a body lice outbreak at the University of Maryland, and it's primarily from poor hygiene, okay? And I used to wonder why Wh1te, the body deodorant for your pits, privates, and more, I'm like, that deodorant lasts 72 hours, but who needs a 72-hour deodorant? And I talked to my line sister, she's like, Frida, a lot of people don't bathe. Oh my goodness. All right, so let's talk about body lice and how Wh1te is not the answer. So recently at the University of Maryland, there was a body lice outbreak. There are 3 different types of lice, right? There's head lice, okay, body lice, and then pubic lice, also known as crabs, okay? They are different. So I'm talking about the body lice. Body lice are these little insects, okay? They're about the size of a sesame seed, and they live in your clothing and in the seams of clothing, and they crawl on your body several times a day in order to feed off of your blood. That's how they live. If a body louse does not have a blood meal for 1 to 2 days, the adult will pass away. And the way that you prevent body lice is by bathing, okay? Taking a shower, bathing, and making sure that you wash your linen, your clothing, at least once a week. And you want to wash it in hot water, 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to dry it on the hottest cycle. If you are in a position where you can't get to a washing machine right away, then take the items like your clothing, your linens, and put them in a tightly sealed plastic bag for at least 2 weeks if you can't get them to a place where you can wash. At the University of Maryland, in at least 2 buildings, they found body lice. Okay? And yes, body lice can occur, especially in people who are refugees, people who are unhoused or homeless, people who are escaping natural disasters when they don't have access to taking a bath. But at the University of Maryland, I'm quite sure that all those kids in the dorm have showers. I know they do. And so in order for there to be a body lice outbreak, the chances are high that the children are not taking showers or baths, certainly not daily and possibly not even weekly. And there are some complications other than the lice just causing a histamine release and the bites and the itching. They can carry certain diseases, okay, like typhus, or trench fever or relaxing fever. So you actually can get an infection from a bite of the body lice. And just scratching, okay, if you scratch and you break your skin, that can also cause you to get a secondary skin infection. So that's it on the body lice. So Wh1te, thank you very much. Wh1te does not kill the body lice.
So welcome back, guys. You heard what this white guy said. All credit to the original content creator. I want to say first and foremost that he was trying to attribute the issue of lies for hyper individualism and aggression, and he tried to blame it on the reason why white folks do what they do. And as the sun increases, there's always going to be a tendency for more aggression, and he attributes all of that to the absence of melanin, which is what black folks have or people of color share. And he's saying that the reason why white folks are prone to parasites, to lice, to bugs as a result of the absence of melanin in the blood. And I want to pause a little bit to analyze the circumstances and the situations that has made itself happen through the course of history. Because when you're talking about aggression, you're talking about colonialism, you're talking about dominance, I think it's not just an issue of melanin or not, because almost every race known to mankind at one time or the other had sought to conquer, to dominate, and to control. I think it's something that is inherent in man, an animalistic tendency, and I do not want to just attribute it to the subject of being melanated. The Arabs have done that, the blacks have done that, and can go down the rabbit trail. But I think it's an issue of cultural values that also sponsors the subject of hygiene. And if there is a culture of hygiene, these subject matters that he is trying to make a case of will be totally dismissed, which is what most of these folks do not share. They have poor hygiene, culture, and so the culture for hygiene must be developed.